You are listening to the audio portion of the QB Power Hour webinar series. The QB Power Hour is a free biweekly webinar series for accounting professionals presented by Michelle Long and Dan DeLong, who are very passionate about the industry, QuickBooks, and apps that integrate with QuickBooks. You can find out all the details about the webinar series at qbpowerhour.com. So without further ado, here's Michelle and Dan.
All right, welcome to another QB Power Hour, where today we're going to be talking about Shopify integrations. Which ones to choose? If you ever have looked at the App Store or that burning question of my client has Shopify and I want to get that into books online, this is the webinar for you because we'll be talking about some of the things that are already in QuickBooks Online and some of the things that are out there. If you've ever looked at the App Store and done a Shopify keyword search for Shopify and see that there's quite a few connectors out there. It is quite complicated as to determine which one works best, right? So, Michelle, good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. Hey, it's a nice sunny spring day, so I am looking forward to doing that because it is confusing when you look out there and you see all those different apps. So I think I love this because I don't know about some of you people, but I get analysis paralysis and you spend a lot of time going in there and analyzing them. So I'm very excited about this today and glad to have you guys joining us. So my name is Michelle Long. I am a CPA and I'm the owner of Long for Success and glad to have you all joining us. Been a contract trainer for Intuit since 2007, author of 5 different books. Check them out if you're interested. And there's the links to the group on Facebook as well as LinkedIn. And love to have you guys join us there and continue the conversation. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Dan DeLong, owner of DanWith, where we transform businesses through technology. And part of that is connecting their QuickBooks Online with their Shopify. And really glad to have Marc and Gennady here from WeIntegrate to talk about their solution. I worked at Intuit for nearly 18 years, co-hosting today, as also the co-host at Workshop Wednesdays over at Schoolofbookkeeping and doing some of the tech editing duties for the QBO for Dummies series of books. So Marc and Gennady, you want to introduce your panel? It looks like you brought a whole list of folks today.
Absolutely. And thanks, Dan and Michelle, for having us today. We're really excited to share how we integrate Shopify with QuickBooks Online. About how I did that. But I am Marc Kalman. I'm one of the co-founders here, and I've been involved with SaaS-based operation and inventory, warehousing, accounting systems for over 20 years, focusing on the small business market. And we saw a real big need here in helping automate the bookkeeping process between systems such as Shopify and QuickBooks Online, and there became WeIntegrate. So Gennady, would you like to take your turn?
Yes, thank you for that, Marc, and Dan and Michelle, thanks for having us. My name is Gennady Kleiner. I'm responsible for the technology for WeIntegrate and a co-founder. I have over 25 years working with various size organizations from small to large, integrating various types of systems, and have been using QuickBooks probably since the early 90s, I would say at this point. So very near and dear to the pains that folks are going through.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And then you've got Randy. He's not with us today, but you want to talk a little bit about your relationship with Randy Johnston?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had the fortune of connecting with Randy maybe about a year or so ago. And initially it was just to see if he would be interested in writing up some stuff on us. I found him through a CPA periodicals that he affiliates with. And in conversations we had, he just was really into what we're doing and thought we were taking a really unique approach compared to some of the other systems out there doing, and just became a real big gel. So he joined our advisory board. He's actively participates in giving us guidance and stuff. And we called all the time in opportunities to really help take his experience and blend that into what we're bringing to market.
Yeah, it's always good to see a familiar face with a new player in the market. So great to see you and Randy teaming up there. So a little details about the QB Power Hour. It's every other Tuesday at noon Eastern. You never know where we're going to be. I am somewhere in Georgia driving up the I-95 corridor. So live from Cracker Barrel parking lot today. But you can always check out our website for upcoming events, as well as go to qbpowerhour.com/resources for the PDFs of the slide, recordings, and the podcast. And if you are listening to the podcast and you feel like it's worthwhile for others, please put a review in for the podcast, because that's what triggers the whole algorithm thing. So appreciate you putting in a review for the podcast, because we do have several folks listening as a replay. I'm not sure if they just like hearing our voices, Michelle, after the fact, because it is really hard to look at slides when you're listening on your Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. But if you could put in a review, that would really help us out, getting that information to other folks. If you have a little housekeeping, if you have some questions about the specific topics that we're talking about there today, please put them in the Q&A, because it makes it a lot easier for us to follow up with that. If you have general comments, we have the chat available for that, and Gennady will be handling some of the Q&A and chat duties for WeIntegrate side of things. Please keep them on his toes. No, I'm kidding. Please put those specific questions in the Q&A. But if you have general comments about Cracker Barrel or the I-95 corridor, please put them in the chat. We also have the links there for the webinar archive, so you can watch other replays as well. So something that's new for the QB Power Hour is we're trying to simulcast and get more folks the ability to see and participate in the Power Hour, rather than just doing it through this webinar format. So we're simulcasting on our Facebook group, inside of YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. There's no need to register, but the challenge is you can't really participate as much as you can if you register on the Zoom webinar. But if you just be happening to pop by and you want to watch, great. That certainly is okay. There is a QR code on the screen because of, I'm trying to remove it off of the simulcast, but I can see it's like there's two on what's going on YouTube and Facebook. There's two QR codes, but because our Facebook group the privacy settings are private, right? So not everybody can see these global posts and whatnot. If you participate in the comments there on the group, it will just show up as Facebook user, which is just exactly, somebody said that, the very same thing. They said hello, but it says Facebook user. So we have no idea who that person is if we wanted to follow up. But you can scan the QR code and it will allow us to be able to, or allow Facebook to see you, or the streaming platform just to see your name, so that we can see who's commenting and be able to address you by name rather than Mr. Facebook user. Yeah, let's go ahead. Stop that. Okay, perfect. Another thing for 2024 is we're taking a stab at a store, and Michelle and I, we do this out of the kindness of our heart. There are expenses and things like that that go along with doing that sort of thing. So to help us out, appreciate if you want to check out some of the store items that we have online, not using Shop. We have some time and electricity based swag there. So chargers and coffee mugs and those types of things to be able to show your love for the Power Hour. Check it out if you feel so inclined. And Michelle and I are nominated among other folks for the top 100 this year. Voting is open. So please, if you are so inclined, please click on the link there and vote for up to 3. You've got an extra vote there. If you're sharing the love for Michelle and I, that'd be great. You still have one other, but there's a lot of people that come to the QB Power Hour who are among this list. It's a pretty nice yearly thing. And we hope to see some new faces as well in this list. So our agenda today, we're going to set the stage for the options for Shopify sellers, right? There are, when it comes to getting Shopify information into QuickBooks, there's choices about detailed information or summary. And that really just depends. Having the answer to that question will certainly help guide in these myriad of questions or a myriad of options that are out there. We'll talk about the Shopify connector inside of QuickBooks, because it certainly is important for those in the accounting profession to at least know that it's there, and the idea of what it does well, what it doesn't do so well, and where it fits, what lane it basically occupies in the Shopify online, QuickBooks Online space. And then we'll talk about WeIntegrate, because typically what we'll see with anything that is in QuickBooks directly is it does the shallow end of the pool, right? It does a little bit well, but typically most people are looking for more than what that does. And then that extends the search to what else is out there. And Michelle had mentioned the analysis paralysis. So trying to find the right fit for what it is that we want to do. And we'll talk about what WeIntegrate does well over the Shopify connector. So we'll start off with our first poll question, which is not on my screen. There it is. How many clients do you have with Shopify stores? Right. So this is a fairly common situation when it comes to Shopify. And Mark, I wanted to toss a question over to you while people are asking here. What have you seen as far as, you're starting with Shopify as your sales channel connector, and, your game plan is, to go to other connectors, but why Shopify first?
Yeah, because when we would run such surveys like this, overwhelmingly anywhere from 50 to 70% of the need was focused on Shopify. Obviously, that's not the only factor that would go into such a decision, but we also saw that from our perspective and our experiences and the conversations we had with bookkeepers and accounting professionals that were working in that space. Shopify is easy to use, so people gravitate to it. But their thoughts around integration seemed to be that there were some systems out there, but it wasn't quite the fit they were looking for. So we saw a bit of a problem that was causing people aggravation and an opportunity that was covering anywhere from 50 to 70% of the market.
Got it. We're taking a look at the sharing the results here. It looks like of their clientele, majority is less than 25%, but then those with none is about 33%. I would be curious how that stacks up against others as far as other sales channels like Amazon, eBay, and those types of things. But yeah, it seems to be the most common online marketplace to work with. They do a really good job of marketing. So
Right.
it's certainly one of those things that people see first. In general, Mark, what's the attraction of Shopify other than the fact that that's what other people seem to use?
Well, I mean, it is easy to get started. When you look at some of the other e-commerce platforms that are out there, some take a little bit more tech savvy, to your fingertips and your thought process to set up. Like we've looked at some others, but Shopify is easy. It's a single thread environment, nice platform to kick off. It's affordable, for the most part, and it just makes it a great starting point for many e-commerce businesses that are just getting started. Let the market shifting, right? A lot of people are getting tired of their day job or looking to supplement themselves, particularly in this economic condition here. And you find that it's a great way to have a side hustle. We're also seeing a lot of folks in Amazon, which is probably one of the areas we're going next. And another cool thing about Shopify too, by the way, is they have these connectors now that you connect into different marketplaces such as Amazon and Facebook. So it becomes a one-stop shop for everything.
Gotcha. Excellent. So let me go ahead and stop sharing there on the poll. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about those connectors and the common question. And when I worked at Intuit, this was still a common question, but it's almost information overload when it comes to, it's a simple question. How do I get my Shopify information into QuickBooks Online? And every one of them, if you go to the App Store and go to apps.com or QuickBooks Online, the App Center, and do a search for Shopify. You can see I just did one and it was 38 results for something with having to deal with Shopify. All of them say seamless integration, but which one to choose? We partner also with Bookkeepers, a Shopify connection or a connector of information into QuickBooks, but they do things entirely different than you do. So like there's a difference in how these things are going to come in. You can see here, there's A2X on this screen, and they're in the Bookkeep A2X realm where their information comes in, but it comes in as a journal entry, or where the journal entry method that's going to have some limitations with what you do in your workflows after the integration. After that information comes in, yeah, it'll post directly to the right general ledger account. But the challenge is, and we'll talk to this a little bit when we get to deeper dive into the WeIntegrate piece of things, is that there's workflows that you're not able to do because of the way things are coming in into QuickBooks online. Michelle, I've been monopolizing most of the conversation. Is this something that you've experienced over with working with consulting with businesses as far as this kind of question of getting things into QuickBooks from Shopify?
I wasn't listening very closely. Sorry, I was trying to help someone. I'm sorry, I was trying to help someone troubleshoot with them, allowing pop-ups to do the full questions and stuff. But I did hear what you were saying about how they all say seamless and how they don't all come in correctly. I was listening to some of it. And that is the thing that's really frustrating for me. And it is difficult to do that and to do the testing to see how they all come over. And they don't all come over seamlessly, and they don't all come over cleanly or the way that you want them to. And that is what's very frustrating for me when I get in there, because, and this is where desktop is definitely got the advantage. It was much easier to do testing and have a testing environment and stuff than it is with QuickBooks Online. Even if you got the backup feature with some of those apps that you can use to where you can do some of that, it's just not as easy in the online realm. And so that's why I like what we're doing here today, talking about this with WeIntegrate and everything, because that really helps us to cut through all the clutter of the 38 results out here and cut to the chase.
And those are the ones that are just on the App Store, right? There's plenty of others that are like under the table.
Yeah. If you look at all of them, then you have 138. So that's why I'm glad we have WeIntegrate here to get through all of this for us and get to cut through the chase and cut through the clutter and get to what really works and what really integrates well and cut through some of that for us.
Yeah. And I certainly appreciate, Mark, all of the integrate puns that we can throw with the name of your company. Right.
And we do as well. Thank you.
Yes.
That's by design.
Yeah. Appreciate that. And Janice was talking in the chat here about having an issue with Shopify holding accounts and clearing accounts. And that seems to be one of the things that is part of the challenge with getting information from an online sales channel into QuickBooks, because there is this delay, right? There's a delay between the time that things are sold, and then there's from the time when money shows up in the bank, which is in the grand scheme of things is accrual based, right? Wide, right? Even if it's just invoices and then payments to for your customers, there's a gap in time. And then if you're doing electronic payments of some sort with those invoice payments, that will take some time before it actually shows up into the bank. So to Janice's point or her question in the chat here is that holding or clearing accounts has been the answer for most of these connectors when you're dealing with, okay, how do I get the sale in there into QuickBooks? And then the days later, the payout is going to come. And then on a side note, if you're dealing with Amazon, that could be 2 weeks from the time of the sale. So you've got this passage of time that you have to account for when it comes to money coming into the bank and sales of things that happen. And there's other things that happen with that sale, like shipping and fees and all sorts of other things that people just tend to say, screw it, I'll just account for everything in the bank feed. And Michelle, that's a no, right?
Not to mention possible chargebacks or any of those things that can be thrown in there. So it can get really messy. Yeah. It gets
I think that
really quickly.
Messy is probably the nicest way to describe it.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it PG here.
So when we spoke to
another common term you hear.
When we spoke to many accountants when we were designing this, there was a line in the sand that was drawn. And some folks said, we live and die by journal entries. And others said, we can't have that. We need to know exactly what's happening. And so even the holdouts with the journal entries, when we show them, when we create actual sales receipts, when we create actual deposits, when we create actual refunds, there's no needle in the haystack. And so we don't require those clearing accounts as a result. And life has become so much simpler for folks.
Yeah,
And
this is
yeah.
great. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's included in the QuickBooks Commerce connector, which if we go back to the last slide, it's the first one there. Go figure on how Intuit's connector gets top billing there when you do that. But you can see it's got 2.5 stars as far as the rating is concerned, with 280 reviews. Look at some of these other ones. There's much more high, and there's higher results of that and that sort of thing. But as far as what's included inside of the Commerce connector, which is, we've done a few QB Power Hours in the past, and we'll have links to those as well if you're like, what the heck is Commerce? But Commerce is included based on the level of QuickBooks Online. So with regards to how many connectors you can have, which currently they only have 3 connectors available, which is silly that Plus and Advanced is unlimited, but that's a future-based thing. They're definitely looking into other connectors as well on the roadmap, but Shopify, Amazon, and eBay, which is like the greatest hits of online sales channels, and they all handle things differently. Shopify being an online shopping cart, Amazon being a marketplace, and eBay being like the American Express of shopping cart. They do things on their own method. They could be a shopping cart, but they're also a marketplace as well. So they're like a hybrid type of thing. So with Simple Start, you get 1. Essentials, you get up to 3, and then Plus and Advanced is unlimited connection. Right. So in the past, we had the QB Commerce Connection Power Hours. We had Aaron Walsh-Dyer talking with us a little bit about that last year. And then we also had the folks from QB Commerce come on last year and talk about the future of it. That was more than 9 months ago. And I haven't seen much more change, to be quite honest. So it's a slow boat as far as the future getting now, but there are some things that are coming in the future with QB Commerce that are cool, like variants, right? And this will be part of the products and services with coming into your list of being able to actually do variances now. There was a hint of sales orders coming in, and this is all part of in service to this solution, being able to do these things, but they're not there yet. So you can take a look at those things as well. But here's what it does, and what it does pretty well, right? It records sales and refunds. It records the payout deposit. It records the channel fees. It records shipping income. And then it also allows you to enter in sales tax, because it's actually creating a sales transaction inside of Quick, right? So you can look at, there's going to be an overview, there's orders, and there's payouts, right? So that you'll see those different things being able to, different areas of your connector being able to be brought into Quick. What doesn't it do, right? It won't track inventory, right? So even though you're selling things on Shopify, and those may be inventory items, the transactions that come into QuickBooks aren't based on an item, right? That may be a future state, but as of today, it does not, right? So those sales that are going to be recorded, yes, they're sales, and they're affecting sales tax. You're only going to have one sales item that you can map that to in the setting. So that means all of your sales are going to one sales item inside of QuickBooks. Now you'll see the order, and there may be some reference to what would actually have been sold, but in the memo, for example, or the detailed description, but the actual item that's going to be posting to is going to be mapped in the settings. And therefore you only will have that one item to be able to use, right? I was testing this out before last week. I have a client he was testing out WeIntegrate with the Shopify connector and some other ones that are out there we won't mention. And we had it. I tried to have it mapped to an inventory account, and those things wouldn't post, right? Because it said, hey, you can't do that. and he only had one item for sale. So it was like, hey, this is perfect because I can choose the one item that's the inventory item. But as soon as you choose an inventory part as the sales item, those orders then don't post. So you won't be able to track inventory inside of QuickBooks Online. And maybe that's what you want, right? Not being able to track inventory. And if that is where your client's workflow exists, maybe they're doing it entirely in Shopify, and then you're just managing the information in QuickBooks. That's a possibility to be able to do that. Another big challenge is that the sales are going to be recorded on the date of the payout. Terrible. If you're wanting to account for the revenue, then great. Do it on the day that it was actually sold. Michelle, would you agree? I
agree. And the other big thing I have a problem with the QB commerce is the cost of goods sold. It's missing. You don't account for the cost at all. And so QB commerce is a great V1. It has a lot of room for growth and improvement, but change is slow, as you said on there.
The things that we've been on the horizon, and Mark, you can probably attest to, we'd love to do all these things all at once, but there is there's a process to making these things come in. And I think the best way that I heard it described as code or programming code is like a ball of rubber bands, right? And you don't know what you're going to be modifying when you go in and change that code. And maybe it's in the middle of the ball and you got to take all of the other rubber bands off in order to fix one thing. And then you got to put all those rubber bands back in the exact same way, or else you've got a mess on your hands, which is part of the challenge of making changes to basically a live product when you're dealing with an online SaaS-based software, right? So that change has been coming pretty slow with regards to the commerce connection. All right. So let's go ahead and launch our next poll. Do you have clients using the commerce accounting or QB commerce, or on the left side, you've got that commerce option. Do you have clients using that?
Have you come across any clients using that?
Yeah, I've been curious as to what it looks like. I've been using it mostly for testing purposes, just to see what it does and what it does well. And there may be a lead that a client is driving through that uses that, which is okay. But typically you're going to find that be the shallow end of the pool when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah, I haven't had a client using it, and I definitely haven't had a reason to recommend it.
Yeah. The one thing, this is off topic with Amazon. One of the things about Amazon, and Amazon is a unique unique situation altogether, like completely different than a shopping cart, like Shopify. But Amazon will basically impound your fee, or basically everything's a fee, but they'll impound your money, basically hold on to your money for 2 weeks. And then every 14 days is when they do a deposit. But one thing that I did like about the commerce connection is that because there's a 2-week span of the money coming in, when it does that over a period, it creates 2 transactions in the right period, right? So your month end would be allocated appropriately as far as what sales occurred when. But again, one item, so there's no inventory with that. And the one I did on January that included December, it put it in the wrong date, or it put it in 12/31/2023 or 2024. So it put it in the wrong year for the last year's sales. But I did appreciate that was only for the year. Months were fine. But that's curious. That's a different animal altogether. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and kind of pass things over to Mark there, but I didn't want to share the results of the poll. It looks at 7%, tried it, didn't work as expected. Right? Not too surprised. But 10% are currently using it, and it does have a place. No, 65% of you said this was the first time I've heard about commerce. So that's good. That's good as far as an education. And then maybe they tried, and then 20% have tried it and had some issues with it. So Mark,
Yes, sir.
let's talk about the other end of the pool that people are needing and where WeIntegrate can come in.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Appreciate that. And hope you guys can see my screen okay. There's lots of things we could share and show today. We will get into a live demo here in a couple minutes. We want to focus in on maybe these 5 key points for today. I will make a couple of general statements. For starters, I know we're talking a lot about Shopify and I don't know about you, but as soon as I hear Shopify, my brain goes into the e-commerce online world. But let's not forget Shopify also plays a pretty significant role these days in the POS world. And I do want to point out if anybody has any clients, whether they're exclusive POS on Shopify or a hybrid, our one connection can support all of it. One of the things that we have built into WeIntegrate, which we'll show a little bit about in our demonstration, is we have a really clean address algorithm that helps QuickBooks better understand to what reference a sale is being processed in a particular locale. So it knows how to organize sales tax properly, right? Because Shopify, it inherently is a multi-location tax collecting type of an environment that deals with Nexus and all that stuff and knows the difference between an online sale and a physical store in different locations. QuickBooks has that capability, but like when you think about how you're putting a sales receipt into the system, when you're doing it manually even, right? There's no sort of way that QuickBooks knows how to default which address you want, right? So unless you specifically change it on the sales receipt and know how to do that and know that it's even relevant, your taxes won't line up in the right place. So we have a really cool algorithm that makes that flawless and 100% accurate. We'll get into that a little bit. And the other thing when we go through this process is to think about that, and something you said earlier, Dan, made me think to say this, is that we don't reinvent the wheel with what we're doing. We just figure out how to make sure QuickBooks is the best it can be. But at the end of the day, what we're simply doing is we're emulating the process as if you were sitting in front of a computer without you having to sit in front of a computer. And so it inherently goes well with the way people are used to learning what their bookkeeping practices usually. Okay, so the 5 areas we want to focus in on here is we want to talk about some of the value that we bring by creating and updating sales receipts and refunds, by the way, that come from Shopify into QuickBooks Online. Dan, you mentioned about sales items earlier. We do give options, right? So as an example, and I'm not going to cover this much of the demo, so I'm just going to mention it now, is when you do think about customer management and item management, right? Some people like the idea of bringing sales receipts in. They like that idea over journal entries for all the reasons you mentioned earlier. But on the other hand, sometimes people get intimidated by that because now they're thinking, oh my goodness, if I get 1,000 sales, am I going to get 1,000 one-time customers now clogging up QuickBooks? And some people don't want that. I don't know actually wants that, but a lot of people don't want that. So you get to choose if you want the customer details coming in, or would you rather it go to just a bulk customer? You can decide in our system. Same with items, right? So you could decide, hey, inventory is great. I want to manage inventory, or I want to manage my sales by items, but maybe I don't. Maybe I still want that sales receipt coming in, but I don't want those item details. So same thing. You can decide if you want to track those details or load it in as a bulk item. And by the way, when you do choose to track details, you have options on how you want to map, right? So you can map like on a customer side, things like email to email or phones and names, all that sort of stuff. And then on the items, you can do standard product name matching. You can do SKU matching. I heard you mention variants earlier. We support variants as well. So it's all cool things we get to choose from. So that's one point. Another point is in this demo, you're going to see that we do it fast, right? You mentioned about the sale getting booked on the payout date. With us, the sale gets booked instantly. Generally speaking, from the time it goes from Shopify to QuickBooks, usually it's within seconds. It's a minute or two at most. And you'll see that.
Yeah. By the time you get to look at it on the dashboard, it's already posted.
Yeah. Which, when you think about the next topic, inventory is a critical component, right? Because if you truly do intend to manage inventory in QuickBooks, right, you want, like, it's all about how fast and how accurate, and right? Because seconds can make the difference between, whether I have it or I don't have it, or my customer thinks I have it and I really didn't have it, and how you deal with those stock out situations. But we do have a way to update inventory inside of QuickBooks. And I'll show you that here today. And then one of our newest features that people are incredibly excited about, Dan included, by the way, is that we now have Shopify payouts coming through. And we've separated the concept of, we let sales be sales and we let payouts be payouts. So now you can have your sales come in, book the sale at its gross level, as it should in, let's call it instant time, right? As soon as possible as it comes in from when time customer places the order, recognize your inventory adjustments, etc. And then 3 days later, when that payout comes through, we bring that payout in, auto create the deposit, reconcile against those sales. So you don't have to now think, oh my goodness, I have to check off 1,000 sales that came in on that payout. Nope, we do that for you all automatically. And we take all the fees and we drop it down at the bottom of the payout. So your net payment is 100% accurate bank statement, which now you can reconcile against your actual sales.
So Michelle's top video on YouTube of how to clean up the undeposited funds account is basically a non-issue anymore with this because it does all that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, Michelle.
Great. That is absolutely great. And you know what, Mark? I can't believe nobody's done it before. It seems so obvious, but I'm so glad you guys are doing this because.
Thank you. Yeah. It was obvious to us when we got in there. I can tell you it was very tricky, so we can understand why people may not do it. But it was, I'm glad to hear you say that because we do. The value to us is when, people like yourselves see these sorts of things. It shows us that we're on the right track to making the kind of difference that we're looking to make, which is awesome. And then another awesome thing we'll talk about today too, by the way, is our tax management capabilities, I guess I'll call it, but not that we're managing taxes, but we ensure and we make sure that the taxes in QuickBooks are 100% accurate with the taxes that are in Shopify. And that takes on two focuses. One is that the actual amounts are accurate, right? So if you try to do this, sometimes you might see where QuickBooks gets like pennies off per transaction because sometimes there's some rounding things differently between the two systems. And then the other is, as I mentioned before, of where those taxes are actually supposed to get located, like which agency is that tax associated with. And then that other one about tax nexus, right? Physical nexus versus economic nexus, where you have to get add-ons to manage all this. Again, we have this algorithm built in that lets QuickBooks be as smart as Shopify when it comes to those things.
Yeah. And you're really using the information that you get from Shopify as the guidance of what this should actually be, because things will change after the transaction posted or anything like that. So you use Shopify as your source of truth of what to tell QuickBooks. Exactly. And leave it up to customers or leave it up to clients to make things a little bit challenging when it comes to this sort of stuff. So we've got other screenshots and things like that in the slides. So people want to download the slides off of the website. They can certainly go through some of these things, but I want to take a look in your dashboard and show and highlight some of these things. So to answer to with your payout functionality, that I think that is a game changer in this space, right? Because of all of the connectors that I've seen and looked at is that everybody wants to use these clearing accounts, right? And then that just makes more work for the accountant to make sure that the transactions that are deposited and the payouts are deposited match, right? So that instead of reconciling the bank account, you're also reconciling these clearing accounts on top of all that. But you're taking a different approach where this is actually going through undeposited funds of all things, right? The payments to deposit is actually going into the undeposited funds, and you can't make a deposit. And this was a thing that I was like leery about using undeposited funds because it is a special QuickBooks account. And I'm not talking like short bus special account, but it's got some functionality tied to it inside of Quick to make sure that you do this right so that it's not causing a problem with your connector versus the reality of what's coming in. But the goal is when a payout comes in, it gets deposited through undeposited funds into the bank, into the bank account. And then the bank feed just then matches to that because the bank feeds coming from Shopify are horrible because there's just Shopify transfer. What was that for? Was that the payout or was that a fee that I had to pay or what was that came in or was it a refund or whatever it is? It's hard to tell just from the bank feeds. But if you have all that information in there in the bank account and then the bank feed comes in, then it just matches because that's what it's looking at first is the amount. And you guys, again, take that gospel according to Shopify as the amount. And that's what typically will show up in the bank.
Right.
I'm sorry, I stole your thunder.
Oh, no, please do. Continue. And one other thing too, Dan, as we had discussed previously, is that for those that maybe, because WeIntegrate allows you to connect multiple Shopify stores, right, to one WeIntegrate account and load all that into QuickBooks Online. So one concern that we've heard is if you start doing that and now you have all this going into undeposited funds, how can you segment it, right? Because maybe you want to put one store in one thing account or one in another, right? That sort of thing. But we have in our defaults a setting at the connection level where you can specify a location. A QuickBooks location comes right out of your QuickBooks table into our system, and you pick a QuickBooks location so that when your sales get posted, you have one channel posting to one location in undeposited fund on the sale and the other to others. So when you go to filter your undeposited funds, you now do that by location and emulates that same concept that's pointing out those sales that you're trying to keep track of.
Yeah, because that was my other big concern about using undeposited funds is that if all of the sales receipts are coming into undeposited funds, that's going to make a huge problem, especially if people are using undeposited funds for other things that aren't Shopify based, right? Like they create an invoice and they receive a deposit, goes through undeposited funds. Oh, good Lord, how do I get through this mess? So to your point, you can set up locations and then choose the location on deposited fund screen to only show specific locations so it can weed out those extra transactions.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So I'm just jumping ahead to what people with having to do this, although I have to do it because part of the demo is I think the first thing I'm going to focus on that payout since we've kind of like discussed it right now. So might as well on that. But before I do that, I'm just going to drop a couple of quick sales in that we will run the payout against in the demo. So I can show a couple things. One is I will show how we process the sale and how that goes into QuickBooks. And then people can also see how fast it generally does go. So I'm just going to make up some, fake customers here. My computer a little tight.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, I wanted to address the question in the chat is that Shopify handles different payment methods and how does this connection handle those methods? So as long as it's coming through Shopify payments, like there's a recent change where Amazon Pay is now being included in Shopify payments. So as long as they have some kind of connection into Shopify payments, then this will continue to do this. I think the best word and the Intuit buzzword is automagic to be able to do this. Now, if they're using something outside of that, PayPal or Sezzle, where it's completely outside of the Shopify payments realm, then this won't work. But that's not like the be all and end all. That's on your radar for that to work for other payment methods.
Correct. I'm going to go ahead and push through the sale. Just one thing I want to point out is, so I put this sale in for an address out of New York, Manhattan, and Shopify knew enough to calculate tax on it because one of the locations we have set up inside of Shopify is a New York address. Right. So Shopify, just pointing out as we do this, Shopify knows how to auto calculate that. So we get a total here of $100.16. And we'll go ahead and process it to one order. And then I'm just going to drive the same exact thing through on a second order real quick. And then we will show the output of that and do payout.
And your main focus is let's start with Shopify because that's the most commonly used one. And then you'll take all these learnings and move them into other channels. So like Ross was mentioning in the Q&A, well, what about Squarespace? What about WooCommerce? What about fill in the blank? You're going to take these things that you're learning with the big hairy beast of Shopify and then taking those into the other online sales channel.
That is correct. Yes. And we chose to go deep into Shopify first. You just go deep and really knock out everything we can. And then let's take that and move over to the next one.
Do you regret that decision?
Not at all. Okay. It's a big part of what's like showing people that there's another way to do this, right? That can make things a lot easier. I'd rather help people get really easy on one thing.
Right.
And then
eat the elephant first and then everybody else is kittens and puppies.
Exactly. All right. So this one, But
And
I
what's
think
interesting is that Shopify has recently opened itself up to other platforms. So we now have Shopify orders coming through from Amazon and eBay and others that are going through Facebook Marketplace. So they're basically being the consolidator. And we obviously support that from the get-go. And so we're now having those types of orders come through as well.
Yep, exactly. One thing I was about to mention before I switched over. So that second sale I did based out of Georgia, and Shopify knew not to charge tax on that one because I don't have a physical location set up inside of Shopify for Georgia.
Got it.
Now you'll see we already have a number 2 here, the 2 sale we process. And one other point real quick, just so there's no confusion. I am inside of WeIntegrate today because I am demoing how it works. WeIntegrate is a sort of set it and forget it type of a system. So you don't have to come in here. There's no buttons to push, just build a connection and then everything automates whether you're in our application or not. But you can come in.
It's a crock pot application. You just load your ingredients and then wait for dinner.
Exactly. And now you'll see here, these 2 lines here at the top. These are the 2 orders I just processed out of Shopify. So showing Shopify orders number 1552 and 1553 for the total amounts. You can see, if you remember what I showed on the screen, the whole total of the first one was $116, which includes some shipping and tax. And this one doesn't have any tax at all. We show you the ship status and pay status here. So we take a little bit more of an operational flow on what we do too. So for example, I'm just going to don't rest for 1 minute here. Next time, I'm going to squeeze it in. Is if I take Shopify, if I take one of these orders, and if I properly, if I take one, let's say I take the second one here, and if I open it up, and now I want to fulfill it, whether I'm doing it in Shopify or on a third party app or even a third party warehouse connected to Shopify, and that fulfillment is done right here. I'll just put some values in right into the screen, whatever tracking number, and then we'll start tracking as the carrier, et cetera, and then say fulfill. What will happen in WeIntegrate, first of all, and I'll just give that a couple seconds here. So I'll just point back over here. So we show you pay status that you've been paid, ship status. They're still showing as open. They haven't shipped yet. They didn't receive a certain period of time ago. And then last sync, this is the last time it got connected here with QuickBooks. And you can see that one that I shipped now shows that it's been partially shipped, right? Less than a minute ago. If I hover over here, we show you the actual date and time, but now we show you the QuickBooks sales receipt number that got generated inside of QuickBooks, right? So 3174. And then on this one, it was 3173. We do give you an option that you can map the Shopify order number as the QuickBooks sales sheet number if you want, or you could use the QuickBooks auto-generated number. Both have a place, but regardless of which one you choose, we make sure it's clear to you that there's a connection between this sales sheet number and this order number. I'm just going to quickly go in here and show these 2 sales that we just generated, and then we'll go ahead and run that payout for the deposit. So here are the 2 sales receipts, 3173 and 3174. You'll see here in the memo, we show you the actual Shopify order numbers right here. So you don't have to go very far to see that this sales receipt is that order number. You'll notice they are exactly to the penny of what I showed you on the Shopify and the WeIntegrate side. If I come into this first one here for $100.16, you'll see that the taxes, let's see what we're sorry, it's taking a second. There we go. The taxes are all accounted for. It knew to do all the taxes while I was loading. And one of the ways that we accommodate that is we show you here the ship to, and address information, but then we also replace the ship from based on that physical location that we saw inside of Shopify. So QuickBooks now sees this as a ship to New York from New York scenario and knows that on its own, not just that it needs tax, which we overwrite anyway from Shopify, but then where to put that tax. Like that tax belongs to that New York tax agency. And you can see it's only $8.18 right out of Shopify.
And if it's a return, it will just be a return receipt with the exact same information.
Correct. And because we're doing that too, when the payouts are coming through and they have those returns embedded inside of them, it will account for it properly. Yeah. It's really cool. All right. So that while Nadi may be really processing that payout, I am going to go ahead and share our second sales receipt real fast.
And we might go over a little bit, especially if folks have good questions that I'm seeing rolling in here as well. But we do want to make sure that we see this payout, because that is the biggest game. I'm just going to say it's a game changer in this space where you're actually going through undeposited funds.
Okay. So on this sales receipt here, this one is the second one I did when I shipped to Georgia. So you see it shipped to Georgia. You'll notice the address here is, you wouldn't know it by inherently, but you see it's a different address. This is based on the default QuickBooks address now, because we couldn't find an address matching our algorithm to control that physical nexus. So what'll happen is, and I'll show you in the nexus area in a second here, that gets tracked by QuickBooks' economic nexus tool. But you'll see down here at the bottom, there's no sales tax applied, and the total comes out to the exact penny that was on the Shopify side. One of these we also do, by the way. Remember, I did that fulfillment on the Shopify side. I took a little sidestep, and then I came back and dropped that in there. So when that comes available, we go back, we update the sales receipt. So you have all that tracking information here around the sales receipt for those that need it. And we also are loading the shipping fees here as a line item. On the P&L, it comes out exactly the same, but there's more value here. It helps us better control the sales tax as well. But in addition to that, we're now able to show the service level. So you can see the shipping service level here is economy. It could be rush, it could be whatever. But then we also, when Shopify sends us the tracking info, in this case, like the URL to track the package, we add that to that reference as well. Just give me some of the little additional extra value. And earlier point, you'll see it here on undeposited funds. So that's an example of sales receipts. And now I am told the payout has been processed for those two orders I just did.
But typically this would be a couple days later, right? The reality is that Shopify doesn't process payments this quickly.
Correct.
But in your testing environment, so a couple days have passed. There's now a payout. Let's take a look at that.
Yes. A couple days have passed. It's great. No, like that.
While you're bringing this up, I'm going to throw up the last poll.
Sure.
So if people do need to drop off at the top of the hour, they can do. And where to go? I had it. Oh, there it is. There we go. So we'll just launch that poll about learning more about WeIntegrate. All right. Did it post already? I missed it. I blinked.
You want the payout post?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. So we have a checking account that we set up in our demo called Shopify Checking One. And here's the payment that just came through, right? So we took the two sales together, put them together. The net deposit is $177.41. If I hover over the split here, you'll see that pops up. I don't know if you guys can see the hover over. You'll see there's two sales receipts, right? That are on there minus the two processing fees.
Go ahead and edit that, because one thing I really like about what you do is account for the fees separately, and there's reference to it. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, or you know what Michelle tells you to do is how to clean up credit card charges in undeposited funds in order to get that payout, that the bank deposit to actually match, is to put negative dollar amounts in the bottom, and you actually split them out individually with the reference number to the transaction. So you'll be able to see all of that in one place, and you don't have to necessarily go hunting for what was this $3.01 for. Oh, the reference number here, that's the Shopify order number. I can go and check on that if need be, if it's an odd amount or something like that.
Exactly. And we also have an overflow scenario too. So if for some reason, if like deposit came through and the payout was for 10 sales, and for some reason only 9 of them are in QuickBooks for whatever reason, that overflow would get thrown into an unmatched account for whatever that difference is. And at least it kind of holds you in on, hey, it was able to reconcile everything that it had, even like this overflow, this called clearing account kind of scenario, but didn't disrupt the fact that your payment matched your bank. And now you can just deal with that small piece of discrepancy and figure out what went wrong on that and make your adjustment.
And the biggest concern that I had when you were telling me that you were going to be thinking about using undeposited funds as your payment deposit account was what if there's a payment that, or a sale that's not posted, right? Or, if you can't use, because it's going through and checking off the sales receipt in the payments to deposit section and then accounting for the fees. What if somebody got click happy, deleted the sales receipt by mistake, or it never posted because of there was some error? How do you handle that deposit in that situation? Because the reality is funds were deposited. Just because they're not in undeposited funds shouldn't stop the payment from actually depositing. So how do you handle that?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
That was a question.
And that's what I meant. The same way I handled the other scenario. I'm sorry. I thought it was related to that. Yeah. So we have in our system, you can set up a default account where you can place unmatched monies. So if the deposit was $1,000 and the payout's $1,000, we want to make sure that when that deposit here in QuickBooks gets created, that it's also $1,000, right? Because Dan's point is money's still coming in, right? It's just a matter of why did it come in. And so we ensure the integrity of the deposit. So if there's something we cannot find for some reason, something's got a balance or sales receipt went rogue, that variant value will wind up getting posted to that unmatched account. And you get the opportunity to call what you want, and you set it up inside of our system that this account gets used for this purpose. And then we post those overflow amounts to be positive or negative, of course, to that.
So in the grand scheme of things, if we'll go into some kind of nebulous account, unmatched sales or whatever it is that you want to call it, and that's the account that you really need to look at and see, okay, this is my problem child account to look through as opposed to the entire clearing account. And to someone's point, you have to use undeposited funds. The answer is no. You can still use your clearing accounts if that's what you used to, and you don't want people to touch undeposited funds. You can certainly not do that. But this is one of those things that, what are you going to do with your free time when you're not needing to clear up all the clearing accounts?
Exactly. Yep. And so they said clear account.
Michelle, to you, this was like a blind taste test, right? Like there's a blind reaction. What do you think?
I am very impressed. I love how slick and streamlined it is. And I think it's pretty cool. I really do love it and everything. The only one thing I was sitting here wondering about, and it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally you'll have a net deposit for the day that's negative because you had returned. Like let's say in January after the holiday and everybody's returning their Christmas gifts or their holiday gifts that they didn't like or something. So at the end of the day, when that deposit comes up negative, is that going to cause any problem?
No.
That one had 2 transactions. Let's say there were 5 transactions for the day or whatever, and it came out to be a negative deposit for the day. Is that going to cause any problem?
No, it does not, Michelle. It works well because you'll see we have, like, even in here, we're showing that we have some refunds in here. So whether it's positive or negative, it comes in, creates the deposit, and you're good.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I'm impressed. I love it. So I encourage people, there's been some great discussions in the chat. I've been watching them and everything. And I encourage people to call you all because there's been a lot of discussion. Can I do this? Can I do that? And what about this? What about that? I encourage everybody to schedule a demo with you all and follow up with you for their specific questions and things like that.
So the big takeaway that I'm seeing where WeIntegrate specializes is when you need to account for the inventory inside of QuickBooks and you're solely using Shopify. That's where WeIntegrate would do really well. There are other applications out there that will do multiple sales channels, and maybe they even work with the payouts and those types of things. But the price point for doing that is significantly more than what WeIntegrate will charge. Because typically you would say, Mark, mostly the pricing strategy for this industry is volume of sales and number of sales channels to connect. And you guys adopt that as well. But if you're just talking Shopify and Shopify payment and inventory, I don't think anyone comes close to where your price point is. The other players that are out there, you're looking at like $100 a month for their lowest.
Right.
option where you are significantly less than that. You can have a free trial.
We have a 15-day free trial, correct? And then for those that are, let's say under 500 transactions per month, you can get started for as little as $19 a month. And you get access to the full features that we showed today for that price. And when there are some other vendors out there around the same price point, but what you'll see is where we're $19 a month and they might be $19 a month. For that $19 a month with our competitor, you may get, let's say 200 orders a month, 200 documents a month. And with us, you get 500.
You get more for less.
Time saving. Yeah. Not to mention the time saving.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it makes everything so much easier. I think you guys really have hit it here. I think you guys really hit the nail on the head and you did some stuff that seems very obvious. And you're like, why didn't anybody do this sooner? So kudos to you and job well done. So I encourage people to call with additional questions, schedule a demo and check it out for themselves. So great job.
Thank you. So thank you.
All right. We did run a little over. So this is the Power Hour plus 10 minutes.
Plus, however, everybody
we'll
things these days. We plus it.
I know. Shopify plus, Power Hour plus. Yeah. This is
There you
the
go.
after show. We appreciate you all joining us, Mark and Gennady. I appreciate you joining us from WeIntegrate. Michelle, it's always great to see you. So we'll be here in a couple of weeks with more marketing advice from the folks at Wizard of Ads, how you can build a story for a marketing firm. So we'll talk to them next time, and we'll see you next time on the QB Power Hour. Have a great day, everyone.
And thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed listening to the QB Power Hour podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in our Facebook group. You can find those resources and much more at qbpowerhour.com.